Hi, Awakening Insider. Here we are. We're live. So good to be back. Tonight and today we have paranormal ghost stories. Ooh, I needed like
Mhm.
spooky intro music. Anyway, it's so lovely to be back here. I see that we have some gorgeous soul family. Hey, Jake. Happy birthday to you and Corbin. It's their birthday weeks. And we've got Ken here, and I think Tim must be at work. So I hope you enjoy this replay. And yeah, tonight we're going to share a couple of ghost stories. And just to get us like warmed up into the theme, I'm going to pop up one of my favorite ghost pics. And I use that word lightly because as a kid, this absolutely terrified me. My grandmother had bought a book that would sit on my sister and my bookshelf for years and years. And I knew this photo that I'm about to show you was inside of it, which is probably one of the most famous ghost photos. So we have this one here, and this is in the countrylife.co.uk website, and it's a day in a life of a country photographer. And they actually captured this image of a ghost walking down the stairs or just sort of eerily staying there. So as a kid, I had the book on the bookshelf with this pic. So I think this was maybe around like 85 years ago or so this was captured. So there's many more different photos and things like this. We also have examples of ectoplasm. So, mediums that would actually communicate or work within the spirit realm, some of them actually being physical mediums, could actually manifest this ectoplasm. So, if we look back to our knowledge of what we grew up with the Ghostbusters, you hear them talk about ectoplasm or, like Slimer, he slimed me. It's sort of like this plasma type substance that exists between both of our realities. And even in the old Tartaria days, they had these. I couldn't find any photo examples of it. I think Campbell from the Tartaria Australia, who does the auto diacratic YouTube channel, you'll probably find some things on his channel to do with this. But they actually had these round looking screens that had all this plasma energy around it. And they would have the almost like a FaceTime video chat kind of plasma energy image of loved ones from people that had passed on. How about you guys? What is it that excites you about the paranormal and ghosts, or was there anything that intrigued you when you were younger?
Well, I have to say that, I've haven't had a lot of direct personal experiences in my younger days, but I certainly heard plenty of stories. And where I live, is there's a lot of stories in this area where I live. I live in an old part of Auckland. It's one of the oldest parts. And so when you have a history of people of everything from and we are talking about people who landed here and then had to figure out how to survive here, and so there was a lot of struggle and a lot of tension, and that focused sort of tension is what can create conditions for this kind of phenomena to become present. And when we see the photos and that, I mean, oh geez, some of that stuff you can feel it, right? And I recall just quickly a story of there's a couple of places in Howick that have been brought to my attention, and one of them is a friend of mine was living in this place, and they're all sitting in the dining room, and the house was decorated, hadn't changed much. It was a rental, but it had been previously owned because there's a lot of houses that were owned by families for well over 150 years, and they're sitting in this room, and there's a chandelier hanging down on a chain, and the chandelier starts winding its up on itself and climbing up towards the ceiling. And they're all
Oh,
like looking at each other. Like, I know the people, right? And they're like going, they're just hard. They're like blue collar hardcore workers, and that, they're just getting on with their lives. And they're like going, this was freaky. And, and they couldn't get out of the lease that quick either, quick enough.
Mhm.
But it turned out that there was a strange thing inside one of the wardrobes. I think in one of the bedrooms was a locked box, and nobody had the key. It was like built into the wardrobe, like a safe of kinds. It wasn't a safe, it wasn't metal, it was a wooden box, but nobody had the key. And they all thought that maybe there was something in there. Well, when they finally did manage to crack it open, there wasn't anything in there apart from some old newspapers, although that, but yeah, I mean, we're just getting started here on the show today. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming along. And yeah, I've got a few more things to share and some personal ones too. But I mean, as far as like the stories go, I mean, if somebody does it, plenty of people go, oh, I don't believe in, I'm not into UFOs or I'm not into this or that. But, pretty much everyone knows someone who's had a paranormal experience with something from another plane. And yeah, like you said, Sol, the ectoplasm thing, it's kind of like a material substance that kind of bridges reality as well. And yeah, and Ghostbusters, that's a whole nother conversation too. I wonder how many of the benevolent spirits out there like the idea of humans getting cool with the idea of busting ghosts, when there's, yeah. So anyway, that's just my concentrated entree. Brother Greg.
Yeah, hi guys, great to be here again. And you're right, Phil. I think because both our countries have kind of been settled rather late by the Europeans, and they brought a lot of angst. I always felt Victoria, because I'm from Victoria, where Sol is now, and I've always felt that's a really spooky place. I mean, country Victoria, my God, I've had I was brought up in country Victoria. I remember my brother later on lived in Port Fairy, Port Fairy down on the Great Ocean Road, and that's an old one. And the cottages he lived in, it was like an 1830s cottage, and I remember staying over there, and I had to get out. Listen. You're talking chains rattling at night. You're talking chains rattling at night when there's no wind and there's no chains. You're talking moaning, like really, and scary shit. As a kid, and I think, look, I just think also in country Victoria, it's funny because later on, like UFOs and aliens are fine with, in the astral fine with. But as a result, because I was brought up to be scared of ghosts, when ghosts approached me in the astral, I'd freak out in the beginning. That was something, give me an alien, give me a monster, give me some interdimensional being, but don't give me a ghost. So that's been my kind of point of having to work that one out. And I have worked it out. Because of experiences. But totally, I'm fascinated with the whole ectoplasm stuff too. I remember as a kid, this is a while back, of course, because I was born before you guys. But I had a game called Kreskin's ESP. And it had like all the cards. I'd almost forgotten that. It had the pendulum and it had all the, you sort of did little seances. And I was doing this when I was like, 9 years old and stuff. So not a good idea. But yeah. But anyway, we've got a few stories to tell tonight, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool and scary. Really scary. And let me know in the chat below tonight if the hairs stand up on the back of your neck when we're telling some of these stories. So we'll start with, I just want to pop this up before I share one of my own ghost stories. So, and we've got potions. So if you are wanting to sort of enhance your connection with the supernatural, I definitely would recommend the Vision Quest. And we also have readings available on masonjupiter.com using discount code Jupiter. And we do have the next one that you guys will see us on. So our next episode next week will be telepathy and telethought. So looking forward to introducing you guys to the topic of telethought. If you are to pop it into Google, we have a different explanation of what telethought is and the connection with the mystic and with the universe and supernatural and how we can connect our own telepathy to telethought. So please don't miss that episode. This is going to be a really, really good one. And don't forget to go on over to philrice.substack.com and check out all of the latest articles and his bookings that he has over there. And also Greg with Astral Travel. And we might check in with you in a little bit too about how the weather's going up with the crazy things that people are saying is happening up your way, and check in, make sure you're okay. Let me just pop up. I'm just going to have to change the settings so everyone can hear the sound on this one. Oh, here we go. So what I'm about to share is called the Skull Experiment. And I just want to play this little intro. So it was actually documented and proven that people can make contact with ghosts. This happened in our recent history between 1993 and 1998. So have a little listen to this.
Scientists actually documented proof of the afterlife in a cellar.
Checking you guys can hear that.
Follow to hear the true story of the Skull Experiment. where the spirits left physical evidence that stunned the world. In 1993, in a Victorian cellar in Scole in Norfolk, something unprecedented happened. A team of respected researchers and scientists gathered together so that they could conduct what would become the most compelling afterlife experiment in history. They sealed the room so no light could enter. They checked everyone for hidden devices. But what happened next defied all explanation. Objects began to materialize out of thin air. We're talking crystals, coins, newspapers from other centuries, all examined and proven to be authentic. But the most incredible thing was the photos. In complete darkness, images appeared on sealed film, and scientific experts confirmed that this was not like a trick of cameras. They showed faces, messages, and even scenes from different time periods. And one scientist, a hardcore skeptic, watched an luminous hand form in mid-air and wrote a message to him, something that only he could have known. But what the spirits revealed next had even the hardened researchers questioning everything they thought they believed and knew about death. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss the next.
So that is one of, I think, the more recent intriguing stories. And you will also find there is a website or a few websites that talk about the Skull experiment. And yeah, it was cute because it was, I think, a husband and wife and two of their friends, and they were all sort of, I guess, proficient with mediumship and decided to get together and make contact. So you can definitely find out more evidence, and there's a lot of YouTube and things that you guys can also watch on this. So yeah, it officially has been proven to be a thing, and we hear stories of like Sai Baba with materialism or manifestation and things of that sort of nature. But getting back to ghost stories, so we grew up with ghosts in my parents' house. So we moved into a 2-story house in Victoria, sort of around the hills in the eastern suburbs. And it was just common knowledge in our family that there was 2 ghosts in the house. So there was one upstairs that would sort of pop through the floor of my sister's bedroom. And by the way, I was the only believer in the paranormal in my family's household growing up because I saw and experienced things all the time. But it was still common knowledge that there was ghosts in the house. That was apparently like a normal thing. And there was another one, a young girl, probably around age 13, that would appear in like a white kind of gown that would haunt the downstairs hallway. And so as kids, if you had to run from the kitchen to go to the bathroom, you literally would run and bolt and come back. And even the younger kids in the family, nieces, nephews, they were also aware of the ghosts that were in the house. So there was a story of the previous owners losing a daughter in a drowning incident. Unfortunately, we're not sure if it happened at that house or at their previous house, but there definitely was 2 female, younger, around teenage years, ghosts that were haunting the house. So yeah, you do get that feeling of the back of your neck, the hair stand up. Another one I want to share just quickly before we move on is when I was 18, going away to, I think it was like, might have been like Torquay area, which is like a famous like surfy area here in Victoria, near Bells Beach. And just going away there, I was in a little apartment, and it was newish apartments with my boyfriend at the time. And I was just making some chicken soup on top of the stove. And I turn around, I'm the only one downstairs, and all of a sudden in front of the oven and stove is a tea towel floating in the air. I scream, the tea towel drops, run upstairs and tell my partner. And he's like, what? Because he didn't really believe in any of that stuff. Anyway, so in the meantime, waiting for him to dry off, come downstairs, I'm like, what if I actually scared the ghost? So I went back downstairs, sat on the couch, tuned in, and I'm like, I'm sorry if I frightened you. I didn't mean to scare you. It was just a shock seeing the tea towel in the air. Anyway, it turns out that this soul that was like more kind of, I guess, stuck between realms or stuck in Bodo was there for the comfort of chicken soup and the memories and things that it invoked from them. So they were there, I guess, before the apartments were built. So that is one of my ghost stories, that I've seen something physically floating in the air. Did you want to share one of yours, Phil?
Yeah, so, not long after I started meditating about 10 years ago, I guess what happens is that when you take on the idea of like just exploring perception and awareness, right? I get this, and I talk about this too. You sort of get these glimpses of things that, to pique your curiosity, to sort of like encourage you to explore further, because part of the landscape of any growth period is encountering things that may initially be somewhat challenging, or they it's like a teenager. They don't like doing the dishes, but once you're an adult, you just do the dishes. It's not the best example, but it's the same thing, right? Like you experience resistance towards something, and then you acclimatize to it, etc., and then it becomes normal. I mean, I'm sure Greg, when you first started having astrals, bro, there was a couple of things that made you go, hey, and now you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's just Tuesday, and so for myself, when I started meditating, I had a couple of distinct experiences that were pretty much the same. They were about 3 months apart. And I remember I was sitting in this exact spot here. This is when I was still playing a lot of music. I had a beautiful guitar set up and a beautiful amp set up. And I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of having a jam. And the next thing I see out of my sight, out of my peripherals, right? And we know that our focal vision and our peripheral vision use a different set of systems for capturing information, right? And so one way to develop clairvoyance is to learn how to bring your peripherals into your focals. But staying on topic here, I'm sitting here and I'm having a jam, or I'm doing something at the desk. The next thing, this giant black, I described it as like a panther. It was that big. It was like a giant black cat. I was like looking ahead, but it was like in the corner of my eye. It was this huge black shadow kind of thing that just moved past. And I was like, what the heck was that? Like, there was no shadows. In this room, you don't get all that sort of thing. There's no tricks like that. It wasn't like oh, that must be a whatever. It was like, this was a significant experience. Now, about 3 months later, I'm in my bedroom, and I've moved on from that because there's other things going on. And the next thing, I'm sitting there, and then I see the same thing happen again, but on the other side of my peripherals. And there were two very distinct moments. Now, were they ghosts? I don't know. But what it was a paranormal type experience, because not only did I see it, but I felt it. There was a kind of bridging where there was whether it was my spirit sense of feeling, my clairsentience was activating, or whether it was something that was pushing through that my physical body was picking up on. But the thing is though, is that it didn't give me the willies. There's a great term, isn't it? The willies.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure if our audience understands that. Us Aussies understand the Kiwi analogy of getting the willies.
Okay, so it's like, oh, you feel like, oh, you feel it, right? I'm doing my best to act this out and to give you an idea. And if you watch any of those ghost shows where they seem to have genuine experiences, I mean, I saw one where they were trying to communicate, and he's in this old abandoned place, and he's when he hears the voice, like he just starts to sort of like discombobulate a little bit. But anyway, enough of my funny voice acting skills there. I just want to say, you kind of know, like, and I want to say too that when it comes to like sessions with like on the healing table, when the Reiki practice ends up turning into more of a shamanistic vision quest experience for some people, and I'm sure Brother Greg can talk about this too. When I started closing the curtains and darkening the room, and then lowering the stimulus so people could get really deep and all the external kinds of data sensory inputs reduced, that invoked other types of experiences too. But I think, when somebody said to me, because they've got their eyes closed and they're just chilling out for the 45 minutes, and then they go, did someone else come in the room? Was there someone else in the room? And I'm like, no. And they're like, I swear to God. And it was even a familiar feeling, like it was someone that I haven't seen for a while or something. So, that's a couple of examples. Yeah. So anyway, just, a couple of quick ones.
And I could feel the density change when you were talking about that big black cat image walking across. And I think you touched on a really important thing around like the communication. It's just, we're also looking into the physicality sign. And I just want to pop up Murdoch's comment. So do these beings communicate with certain individuals or just anyone? And you might have seen I accidentally flicked this up on the screen for a moment. So for those of you wanting to actually experience or have more direct voice contact, and I have had my friend Gary King on my YouTube channel, I think it was maybe about 2 years ago or so now, you'll be able to go back and see an episode. He actually uses Ghostbox. So you can see it on the Ghost Shop over here. And essentially it's utilizing radio frequency wave technology. And when you communicate, the ghost will actually dial between all the different stations to use the voices that are recorded on the radio, and you'll get what sounds almost like a bit of an eerie, disembodied type voice. The other thing to take note of with this is you don't necessarily want to do this in your house, because when you sort of establish contact and start to work with growing and expanding energy, you don't want to have a little ghost portal in your house. This is something to take note of. And also it is something anyone can do, but definitely working with protection and discernment, sending anything into the light that does not feel good. And this is also Garrick's Instagram, so ITC photography. And you'll see here, he actually does spirit photography captured in water. And so it's not just ghosts that show, it is aliens and things too. But yeah, he had amazing ghost box conversations with his father that had passed. And when he asked his father, where is he? There was 2 other voices, I think, that were heard at the same time. And the father said, I'm by the sea. So from what he can establish, it almost sounds like a living in the dome type situation, where we've got that the waters above, and some of the people that have passed maybe crossed over that threshold or waters. And yeah, he was talking about, I think, being in a boat, and then voices are coming in saying, you can't tell him that. So do check out more of Garrick's work. But Greg, how about you? What would be your favorite ghost story or experience?
Look, probably the most beautiful, really was that, look, it freaked me out at the time. In fact, this is in my early 20s, and I used to go down for music. I used to go to walk down to Warrnambool, so near Port Fairy, down that way, very old whaling areas. And there was this doctor who was the leader of the orchestra to conduct there, and it was like a community thing. And he used to put me up in his surgery, this old house. And there was a room there, and anyway, this place was just so spooky. And I had this experience where I'm lying there at night, and all of a sudden there was this, I'll never forget, this was like a violet sparkly mist appeared over my bed, right? And I'm just pinned to the bed, and a very friendly voice. And a friend of mine had just died. His name was Slim. He was a guy who I'd known from school. It was only a few years after we finished school, and he had died from MS quite suddenly. I remember thinking, gee, I kind of missed the guy. I thought it was just so weird that he died, Anyway, so this sparkly thing appeared, and a very gentle kind of older man's voice, and it said, Greg, would you like to make contact with Slim? And I was just pinned to the bed, and I said, yeah, sure. I was thinking, yeah, sure. Absolutely scared. He said, okay. And the voice was very gentle. I never saw it. All I saw was a purple sparkle over it was like a shroud over my bed. I said, yeah, sure. And the voice is clear as day, and I was awake, and I thought, okay, I'll say yeah. So I said, yeah, sure. Okay, well, imagine holding his hand. So I sort of put my hand out and it said, do you feel him? And I said, yeah. And the voice said, no, you don't. And it said, imagine harder. And then I felt this invisible hand of this mate of mine. I could feel his hand, invisible. just into my physical hand, and I just screamed. And looking back, like it was a beautiful experience. And the guy just passed like a week before, and but like for the first time in my life, I went to a doctor. Like I had to have the light on for 1.5 years. I had to have sleeping tablets. I've never done anything like that. Like I was so freaked out by this, such a real experience. But it was a very gentle, and also not long after that, this old house I was living in Melbourne at the time, once again an old house, had this big old fireplace in the bedroom. Ugh. Anyway, at night I would feel in the dark something come out, and so I would lie there looking away from the fireplace, and with the cover of my bed, and this thing would come over me, and I would hear it go, Greg, Greg. Now it freaked me out. But then the guy I was sharing the house with, his girlfriend, who was an ex-cop, turned to yoga teacher and was a psychic. And I didn't say anything. She just came in the room and said, "Right, you have a spirit that is above the fireplace. He's very sad. I'm just going to talk to him. Is that okay, Greg?" I said, "That's okay." She just talked to him very nicely, and then he went away. And that was when I started to realize, okay. I'm not, just beholden to these things. But they were the really two kind of very personal experiences where, like, not so, I mean, okay, there was kind of an apparition, that violet kind of sparkling kind of was like a hood. But that voice, so a lot of people, you might smell, I think someone mentioned before, that the scent of something, or the clink of a glass, or I know when Moni, my wife's dad, died, he had a very distinct aftershave. You could smell that around the place. So it is, pretty cool. But that freaked me out. It's funny because a lot of this stuff is kind of like I feel in the fourth dimension or the astral. Yet, as I said before, we've just been programmed to think ghosts are really scary. But so it took years to kind of diffuse that fear.
And it's interesting, when you talk about a lot of these experiences happening here in Victoria, because when you look at a lot of the old buildings, they're Tartarian buildings. So I do think that, like, with his story is perhaps not the I guess we have a different history compared to the one that we've been programmed with in school. So there's probably layers and layers of all this, ectoplasm, all of these kind of like vibrational records that are stored within the land and stored within, certain vortex points here and certain ley lines. And I know when I'd stayed in Melbourne, similar things to what you were describing with that friend, talking to ghosts, or, they're telling you information about like what used to be in the place of the building that's currently there. And then you go to Google, look it up. Oh yeah, sure enough. Like, there was a school there where there now is an apartment building. And I think it's a very fascinating subject. And what you said about spirit wanting to come and communicate with you after your friend passed, I had the same thing happen. So I lost a friend when we were around, I think, 18. Really sad situation. And it was suicide, perhaps accidental in the end. But anyway, she would come to me in dream states and ask me how to do things. And it was always so much realer than that experience of this 3D physical world. So it would be haunting on a different level. And this is where astral travel, I guess, and lucid dreaming can really help us if we do want to make contact. And I do know there is some beautiful souls here in this particular tribe that we have that have lost loved ones, whether it's children or, friends, family. Do you have any tips for us, Greg, in how we could perhaps use either astral travel or lucid dreaming to safely make contact with loved ones?
I do. And it goes back to that, and I work with this a lot with people with astral travel, is that heart-based intention. I think, when you go into your heart, that's kind of your greatest kind of protection and empowerment, really. And just there's a lot of techniques to get astral, but I think for someone to meditate, or to when they're going into their astral kind of meditation protocol, is to just imagine that person, the energy of that person, as you're kind of falling asleep, and really imagine kind of meeting them halfway, and kind of make your intention very known, ask for your guides to help you, and really visualize that person, or or the feel of that, the energy of that person, what they give you. So it's what I call like astral targeting, but it's not so difficult to do for those who have passed, because often they're kind of in your aura as it is. They want to make that connection. So I think just to let go of the fear of it altogether, and to kind of pull it into you. So you want to meet the experience halfway, and yeah, just there's mantras you can say to meet them as well, and just ask for guidance, and just pull the scene of that person, or the vibe of that person, that heart connection you have, because in the end everything is a relationship, and that relationship hasn't gone because they've passed, so that relationship is still with you. So you can use that heart chakra pull, that you have that connection to pull them in, and you into that kind of slightly high dimensional state to meet them in a more conscious, lucid way. Just doing it that way, quite simply, is kind of innate, really.
Yeah. And I guess just being aware to, as you were saying, like the smells and things. I know my grandmother, her perfume sometimes will pop up every now and then. Thank you for that advice. That's such a valuable thing for
And to
people.
hold something from them as well. If you have something physical, can be good.
Yeah, tap into that psychometry energy that's stored in the object. And that's why, being my partner having the antique store, and we might get to some ghost stories from the antique store in a little bit,
Yeah.
but certain objects are haunted, that's for sure. Phil, do you want to share any advice that you have around connecting with people, or is there another ghost story that you want to share?
Yeah, I think that when you want to, as a sovereign being on this having this Earth experience, right? If you want to connect with someone who's moved on from physicality, and there's plenty of ways and means of doing this, and but like Greg said, you want to get yourself in a really good space before you do that, because you want to attract you want to have the best experience you can, because sometimes that that experience you evoke for yourself, that you have the best of intention of, like, of creating, can end up being something. It's like you try it once. I remember the first time I played tennis was the last time I played tennis, because I discovered all these new muscles, and I'm like going, I'm not doing this again. If I got some training on it, it'd be a different story, because I'd learn how to not hurt myself, or how to have a bad time. So, research, what's going to be a comfortable experience? Who do you want to reach out to? Why do you want to reach out to them? What happens if they've already reincarnated as well? Are you just going to be connecting with their echo, their sort of their astral echo, that's sort of like up to the point of their sort of the end of their existence, that got their sort of their downloaded version on the astral? Or there's quite a few variables involved in this. But if you would just like to have a sort of a curated or catered experience, by you're just reaching out, like, and you want to have a heartfelt connection, like it's good to inform yourself, because some methods are going to be, you're going to have some capability already present within yourself that's going to be best served through certain mediums. For some of you, you're going to have a visual experience. For some of you, it's going to be a pendulum. Some of it might be, I hesitate to mention it, Ouija board with planchette. There's myriad. But yeah, like Brother Greg says, get yourself into a good space first. And that, like if we just bring up the classic, the heart math breathing, the quick coherence technique, kind of the body of sort of technique that revolves around that. That's a really great way, and just be grateful on that. And yeah, you never know how it might come across, but set up a nice space, clear it out, maybe explore certain other practices for bringing in things, and recognizing that you'll soon find out, like how much you're really in for something. Because but I'd also like to think too that in many cases the experience will be somewhat personalized, to be as a soft a landing as possible, so it's not too destabilizing for you. I mean, Greg, when you're telling me that you sleeping pills and had to sleep with the light on for 1.5 years, I mean, I mean, I remember biting into an apple once that wasn't right all the way through. I didn't touch apples for 2 years, man. You know, it can leave that kind of thing with you. So, you know, I don't really eat apples much nowadays, but from then on, I chopped every single apple. I wanted to know what I was getting myself into. And so, yeah, that's what I'll offer on that.
Oh, well, that's really good advice. And I'll just pop up this. This is an example of, if it comes up, hold on one sec, guys. Let me just push this little button. There it is. So even if we just Google the word mediumship, and Wikipedia has sort of like your, you know, more generic talk of it, but essentially, you know, if you go study mediumship, and I've done a little bit as well, what I find is, because it is like dialing into a different radio station, for me, it's not my optimized station. So there's certain people that love and are really like well matched and pitched at working on that vibration and frequency and wavelength with communicating with people that are crossed on. For me, I love working with spirit guides, with you know, ETs and higher dimensional beings. It just feels like my frequency is more naturally aligned. But with my advice, I guess, for you guys connecting at home or wanting to work with this, it's just simply like dialing your frequency in. And I know when I'd studied with one of our best mediums over here, Greg Riley, and went and did his workshop, it was funny when I went to stand up and do platform, where you do the mediumship readings on stage, and being ADHD and a bit dyslexic, he had the whiteboard and you had to ask male, female, dark hair, light hair, you know, ask for like all of these different things, a huge list that you go through, and you're meant to tune in and get like the first answer that comes. And I'm like, hold on a minute, let me just breathe and center. I called all my energy back to me, and his watch stopped immediately. And he was like shaking it and sitting. It's like, you just stopped my watch working. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like sometimes I have that effect on batteries and watches. I'm like, it's unfortunately not going to start. You'll probably have to replace the battery. But, you know, this is just sort of demonstrating that we do have this psychic energy or this phenomena about us. And that's what was in that picture that I just popped up. But what you were also sharing with us, Phil, about there being sort of like, I guess, a loop or spirit having this, I guess, residual haunting energy. We see that in certain ghost tour places. And I know down in Tasmania, there's quite a few places that you can go to that are quite spooky. I myself do not want to go there. I find even going up into some of the goldfield areas in country Victoria, where they used to do gold panning and things, a lot of spooky ghost energy still there. But the creepiest is not the jails. It's probably the insane asylums. That's where I've seen probably the craziest, like, haunting action, even from the car park there. I was there for a couple of minutes and I'm like, oh my gosh, this place is like unhinged. All of the people that used to be there were still in spirit world playing out this story. And you can clear things like this, spaces, you know, with intention and with energy and with sending them on to the light, because a lot of these people that are past don't realize they're still living in that loop. It's like a video stuck on repeat over and over and over again until you clear that energy, and then their souls can move on and be free. Do you want to share another experience with us, Greg?
Yeah. Think of what you're saying, like the Sixth Sense. Remember that movie, The Sixth Sense? I think it is.
Oh yeah, the I see dead people one.
That's right. And I think Jake mentioned before about this. You know, the people can choose yes or no, and I think you're right. I feel the same. I feel more aligned with, you know, interdimensionals and aliens and that kind of thing, and spirit guides. I did have an interesting crossroad that came astrally related to this. And I might have mentioned this to you guys, but I was in a lucid dream in a cave, and there was a big boulder there that looked kind of very boulderish, very real. I focused in on this boulder, which you can do in a lucid dream. You can focus on a particular object and get pulled into a dimension. So I get pulled, feel my whole like a vortex. Then I'm standing outside of this very real cave, and there's this one guy in a suit, whatever, from a particular religious order. Anyway, he was telling me that he was my guide, and I thought, really? And then my female guide, one of my female guides, was next to me and said, no, you're not. And I thought they were having a bit of an altercation. But then what happened was there was a line of people, and I thought, what's going on here? This is a very interesting astral experience. First was a woman who said, Greg, my husband killed me. I'd like you to help me bring justice to the situation. And I thought, okay, here we go. Here we go. This is what I've been reading. This was quite a few years back. And I thought, I don't want to get involved in this whole karmic, this is bad, good, bad. And there was a whole line of so-called people who'd passed over, or ghosts, you could say. Ghost is such a laden word, isn't it? So in the astral, they're very real people. They're people I could tell that they'd passed over, and it was like, do I want to be that kind of psychic? Do I want to use my astral powers for psychic, for what would you call this, kind of like becoming a ghost spy or a detective? And I thought, no. I remember looking at my guide for advice, and she was just like this. And I thought, thank you, but no thank you. I don't want to get involved. And it's like what Jake was saying earlier, and it's your choice. And I think some people are more aligned with that than others. And as Phil was saying too, there's like the imprint, like you can make a contact, because as they kind of leave this realm, there's kind of like echoes left in the various layers. So you can get maybe their astral kind of signature, and you can talk to that being if you really want to. But I tend to think that my reluctance personally, and it's, as you say, it's just what you're aligned with, is just is the whole getting karmically kind of bogged down with things a little bit. And what I found, that most spirits who are still lingering, they just want to be helped. Like they are living in a loop, and you can just chat to them. Like I remember when this woman chatted to this one in the fireplace and just had a really nice chat. So now if I feel there's something around that needs a bit of a help, more so in Victoria than Queensland for some reason. Not sure why. Just have a little chat into the energy and say everything's okay. But one interesting thing was, I think I mentioned to both you guys, when my mum died, it was actually before she died. She first, she opened this, I did mention, just literally an hour before she died, I was staying in this hotel room, and this sliding door just opened up on this big, thick metal sliding door. And I thought, someone's come in. And I had a feeling it was her. So I got my sister to take me to the hospital to see her. And I felt my body taken over with this kind of astralish kind of energy. And I felt nauseous if I looked to the sides, and my sister had to guide me. I felt like a real drama queen, but she had to guide me into the hospital room where my mum was. And then within a minute, she died. Now, what would happen for the next few months, probably over 6 months, she would come into my body and inhabit my body, and it felt really good, too good, so I couldn't actually physically move. And I would feel her looking, because she hadn't been to Brisbane, I would feel her looking through, and I was kind of talking to her, saying, this is where we live. But I would have to lie on the couch, and I couldn't move. And it was like I could totally feel her spirit within me, and it wasn't negative, it wasn't scary. There was a very real connection, because she became kind of part of my spirit guide team a little bit, which I hadn't, which was unusual. But that was really cool. I wouldn't want to do that for someone who I didn't have that connection with. That's what I was talking about before, to have that heart connection, and like what Phil was emphasizing, just be in a good space, and is all I can say. And if it's your vibe, go with it. You've got to go with what your vibe is telling you, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, that's such an original experience too. Thank you for sharing that. Phil, is there something else that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think, for those of us who are deciding to open ourselves up, because some people don't have the choice initially. They just, they have their sense gates cracked open because of trauma, because of whatever, at an early age or whatever. And I've got people in my life who are highly clairvoyant, highly sensitive, and they had no control over it, because it was something they were just essentially, here you go. And they don't know how to turn it off and on. They haven't got a switch.
That was me.
Right. Okay, exactly. Right. And, they have all sorts of highly vivid, visceral encounters that makes it hard for them to operate and function throughout the day as a result of it. And some of them have thought that even maybe they're like, they've got some kind of psychological disorder, and so they're getting pharmaceutical intervention to sort of manage it, and nothing seems to work. But you know, there's ways you can train to close up that thing, or you can train it to take ownership of it so that it becomes something that you can choose to activate or not. You have a switch, which is why, you know, I have to say the most value that I've got out of searching this whole arena of paranormal, ESP, exploring the greater reality, I have found through the tried and tested methodologies you can find in the various systems of theurgy and thaumaturgy, also known as magic, Hollywood, the occult. But these are essentially the high sciences of developing the internal self and the relationship to the greater reality. By discovering things that are within reach. You expand with what you've already got. So you're making incremental perceptual growth. So you're not, you know, you're not taking the hero dose and overwhelming yourself. Now, one thing about, you know, people who are open to the idea of being of help, there's a lot of souls that are not moving on. And so they're clogging up the astral sphere, if you will. And there's many stratas to the astral, obviously. But, you know, there is, like, you know, I've got, the more sensitive I become, the more I become aware of the fact that there are guardian spirits in my area, which is a very rare thing for me to just sort of randomly start talking about. But there are, you know, I live in a little colonial village that was settled by a whole bunch of little English people, and there's a whole bunch of English spirits that live here. And there is a very old church, and you can go in there, and you know, you can sometimes pick up on echoes, right? But then there's these old cemeteries, and there's a lot of people that really care about things, and there's a lot of angry things too, and there's a lot of just confused things. And so these things, whatever we want to classify them as, like we talked about on the telepathy conversation, could these in fact be influencing the people who are alive in the physical at a deep level, and causing social issues and problems, and causing people to have all sorts of psychotic issues and things like this? And so this is why, you know, I find myself sort of like enjoying the process of going from a guy curious about the outcomes being able to be applied through energy healing of like, hey, my shoulder feels better. Oh, choice one, bro. To, wow, I'm not seeing that weird thing I used to see all the time. Huh. Okay. Now I'm getting visited in dreams by things that don't seem like dream characters. Now I'm having dreams about, oh, I'm sitting in the local main type square in my village, like the town square or the local place where people would gather all the time. I'm having a dream there, and I'm getting visited by these elder spirits saying, oh, you know, I think we're going to accept you. I think you're okay, you know. And it's like there's some good ones there that are trying to help look after the place, and then there's some that are running amok. And we have an advantage here, having a physical root grounding in the physical, where we can you know, act as agents of helping these things move on. There needs to be housekeeping done. And so anyway, I'm sort of wandering off the topic here, but there is this kind of role that people can play. And you know, I think you know, you can do this kind of work without having to get dressed up and wave a big sage cannon around in the main street, and people will think, what the hell's up with this guy? You know, there's ways of helping these discarnate beings move on. And for me, that's valuable because I care about my little community and my village, and I want to care about them more too. It's frustrating sometimes because I just see all sorts of just crazy behavior going on, and I'm almost like, oh man, this is at a loss. And I'm like going, well, hang on. I'm getting involved in metaphysics and shamanism and these types of things. And everyone's going to have a different relationship to those words. But I'm like going, how many of the problems in my local hood are being caused by potentially disruptive energetic influences coming from these beings and entities? And so, you know, what if we are able to affect the collective consciousness on a very local grounded level, where we can actually improve the community imagine if you went around and started cleaning up some of these things, then everyone in the neighborhood starts eating better, or there's less relationship issues and domestic violence starts dropping and people aren't getting road rage and things like that. These are things that I'm curious to explore more and more, because this is when metaphysics and these capabilities become highly functional in developing a society that, you know, I would like to see more of.
Oh, I love that. And the thought of cleaning up on a mass level, that would literally be world changing. And especially how we were saying before about, you know, whether they're in the old towns or like, you know, cities like mine and yours, Phil. We had, and I know we're sort of coming close to time, we've got about 10 minutes left. So I want to share one more of my ghost stories. And if you guys want to share one more each to finish with. So we had this old house that was a Californian bungalow, and it had 2 ghosts in it. So as we can see Phil's screen, like, I don't know if you guys can see, it's like glitching on and off. It's just like a flicker. They can affect electronics. And sometimes, like when we're talking about things of this sort of nature, that we just sort of flicker across the whole thing then. So something is also acknowledging this communication that we're having today.
I just did change the resolution just quickly in case it fixed it. So.
Well, I saw the whole thing glitch for a second. That was strange. But yeah, so one of the houses that we had a few years ago, my son called us into the room. He's like, the TV just turned on all by itself. And this was like not long after moving into that house. Hey, Ben, we've got some more Soul Tribe here. Lovely to have you here. But yeah, so it can affect electronics. And that's why like ghost box and things like that are really good for communication. But one of the stories with that house in particular, there was an old man from kind of like a maybe World War II era that would just appear in the house. And it was sort of common knowledge, like the ghost in my house growing up, that even people that didn't believe in it, that lived in this house, would also see the same thing. So there was a very depressed, tall man that would sometimes just appear. He quite often was in darker clothing. I remember one time going into the bathroom and actually apologizing because I bumped into him walking through, and I could physically feel like myself kind of, I guess, walk through his body or his body walk through mine. But a little bit later that same night, I went into the bathroom and he was sitting in the bath, and he was sitting in the bath with maybe this much water. It was sort of not even up to his knees. And it seemed to be that he was still in that mental mind loop of like the Depression era and the era of where war and things were happening. So the good news was that we did shift him on, and we didn't have any like revisit or anything like that. So I think what you're saying, Phil, about clearing up on a mass level, if we can all just learn to clear up what's in our own backyard or in our own sort of city or town, it's actually a really good thing. And we do know that some of these ghosts that were perhaps violent or alcoholics and things like that do like to attach to people that have those afflictions themselves, and will feed and stream parasitic thought form energy to increase the person to drink even more or increase the domestic violence and things of this sort of nature. So they're still connected in getting their food source energetically via that way. Greg, did you want to share one of your experiences before we have to go?
No, you're exactly right in what you're saying. In that people, you know, because they want to experience. It's like even a so-called ghost. Funny word, isn't it? But even a mannequin in a store, you know, they can take up residence because they get looked at, they get observed. You know, if they're a mannequin who was into, you know, what do you call looking good kind of thing, you know, wanting to be seen. So people's experiences, like I get, you know, in the end, like Reiki, often you could call it helping people with energy, but often you're helping people with entities. You know, there is entity or a bit of entity removal going on. So, and it's a very, I think, for people to realize it's a very fluid realm. Like they can be interdimensional, they can be people who've been living here or ancestral energy, or just somebody, some addictive personality who needs to drive their addiction further by having a human host. So I know these words can sound scary, but they're not really. That's the nature of reality. And as you say, Phil, like when they're influencing our reality, we're influencing theirs. And I think that's probably why all three of us have gone into this field, occupying our lives, because in many ways, if you're sensitive to this, you want to realize that you are a sovereign being. So there are so many things you can do to people having issues to protect themselves and how to clear themselves and how to help things. I think there's one guy, an Egyptian guy, Ibrahim, his name is Ibrahim Karim, and I've got his. Oh, this is his sacred geometry. He has these things. I've got things around the house too, like blocks and stuff.
Oh,
He's done a lot of evidence.
Can we have another look at that, Greg?
Yeah, this
Thank
is just a personal one, and it's what I'll take it off. What it does is it actually tunes into your organ. So all those things are called. Can the camera come on, camera? Yeah.
Oh yeah, put your hand behind it. Oh, there we go. We've got a good focus now. Thanks.
So it picks up on what it calls signatures of your organs, and you have it close to your heart. This guy's done so much research, and there were certain towns in Switzerland that were really suffering from EMF toxicity, right? A lot of people sick, and he went in there and he took in all of these so-called signature things. So his name's it's biogeometry is the name of his field. He's an architect, Egyptian architect, quite old now. And he went in and he cleared this town in Switzerland. It was like a test town by putting these certain shapes and things, certain geometry, actual physical implements, and cleared all this EMF stuff. And what you've got to realize, a lot of this kind of toxic vibe can attract toxic vibes from other dimensions as well. And then what they found was that everyone started getting healthy. Everyone started getting healthy. And it was one of the first times that a place in the world where like the energy minister there said, this guy has healed these people from electromagnetic, frequencies that are not helping. So it's all related, isn't it? It's all related. Like Phil, you were talking about clearing the town. There's all this. It can often show in certain ways. Like I know early on, I used to have a little TV in my bedroom when I lived in Vienna, and then as soon as I started going astral, this little TV would light up at night. All this, and I have the same thing with electronic equipment. Like even now, my camera's flashing like crazy because I don't know. And I realized, and I felt these energies coming from this TV screen. And then I vowed never, this was years ago, never have a screen in the bedroom, never go to bed with a screen in the bedroom, or I turn off all electric things, because these energies, whatever you want to call it, electricity is very handy for them. And I know early on, in the old days when I had cash registers, often they just didn't work when I was buying something. They'd say, oh, the computer shut down. That was often I was having that effect on computers. So yeah, it's the interrelationship between this realm, these other realms. Also, I also know an astral traveler in England, Todd Echemesis, or Pandora's Star Creator, Falcon Echemesis is his name now. He also uses these ghost devices to measure astral energy when he leaves his body. So it's all curious stuff, how it all links. And I think you got to see it's fun. It's a lot of fun, really. If you're feeling well.
That's the thing, I think, if you have your aura sealed,
and you're
very contained within your vessel and very sure of yourself, very grounded.
And one last thing, the chicken soup thing you mentioned for the tea towel, perfect book, Chicken Soup for the After Soul.
Oh, that's a good heading.
Because there's chicken soup for the soul.
We definitely need a part 2. I can see Lorianne and Ken saying part 2. And I only recently saw that guy that you were just talking about. So I think that could be a really great show as well, where we talk about geometries or geomancy and clearing ley lines and things, and really look into, places that have had them cleared and purged. I just want to pop up also for you guys that are interested. Greg has regular astral travel courses. You'll find a lot of information over on his website and bookings, etc. And Phil does as well with his Substack and his bookings that he has over there. And he's always writing away interesting articles for us all to read. Phil, did you want to share a story with us?
Well, I have to say that I know that we're sort of pressed for time here. But a quick story. I was listening to another healer brother, Mark Bajewski, big YouTube channel. He was talking about a trip to Bali recently, and there's a giant, absolutely giant resort complex over there that's been abandoned, and it's just absolutely overtaken with hauntings, and everyone knows about it. And so you'll find that there are these tourist opportunities. If you want to go spook yourself, there's plenty of places to go do that. But just in closing, if I may, please understand, everyone, don't discount the value of your spiritual practice being of service to your local, your physical proximity, local community. Okay. Like, I know it's a bit of an old cliche and a bit of a trope, but seriously, raising the vibe by exploring ways of how you can be a positive influence, because like, seriously, being in service to the sand pit. Okay, we're in a big playpen here. Anything goes just about. However, we know that there are a lot of forces and a lot of angles coming in. The deck is stacked against us in a lot of respects, with electromagnetic radiation all around us, the weaponization of the food system, all of these types of things. It's actually like, okay, there's lots to do. If there wasn't anything to do, it probably wouldn't be half as fun. And there's ways to be a good influence. And, I mean, once you go down the spirito magical sort of track, like the three of us have done, there's not really any turning back. Nothing else really cuts it. So if I may speak a little bit on behalf, not completely, but yeah, by all means, there's plenty of ways to explore how you can be of value for others. I love seeing people's creative potentials who are not necessarily spiritual people, but I can sort of affect value in their lives, through my practices and through my capacities that I'm building. So, this is an exciting time. We have the internet, we have full access to information to help build ourselves up in the way that we choose. And I will leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I also want to check in. I know Debs had also said, and a few other people in the audience sending love to do with the cyclone. Can you just maybe give us a bit of reassurance, Greg, and just let us know what you're experiencing up there at the moment?
Well, look, my grandfather was the loveliest bloke. I lived with him for a while. His name was Alfred. I can't imagine a cyclone named Alfred doing any harm. Not any that. Well, that's my feeling. And I was saying a while ago to a few people, I said to a few clients, look, we'll just let's focus in, and I was kind of talking to the cyclone and stuff. So we've got beautiful weather here at the moment, despite our city being locked down. When I say lockdown, it's everyone's choice, but they have. But yeah, the winds are coming in from the south. So it seems that the southwest arm, which is exactly where Brisbane is, it's a remarkably slow system. Like it hasn't even made landfall, but the surf has been enormous down there. Sunshine Coast just above Brisbane is surf's cleared up. Everyone from Brisbane's up there surfing today. I think it's beautiful surf. So it's a really weird one. I think we're being told anything that you can lift, you've got to get out of your yard because the wind can lift it. I'm not sure that's going to happen. We're lucky. We're in a valley near a forest. Trees have already started falling a bit. I feel sorry for the trees. So for me, I'm feeling sorry for the animals a bit, because they're gonna really cop it if we're not used to these kind of winds, if they really are 130, 150k. So, but at this stage, it looks like it's going to come in tomorrow morning. So we're all prepared. I've got the whole deck in my healing room. Fortunately, it's a large studio, so I'm having to, everything's migrated. But we're okay. We've got a food and we're being told to have a generator. I think it's a bit weird. Look, the government is being particularly, over the top. But that's okay. I think if you're by the beach and low lying, that's brutal. That's really hard with the storm surges and the rain.
Oh, and I was just reminded as well, the bells. Remember, I think it was with the hurricanes and things in Florida. People were talking about that in the old days, they would ring bells to, whether it's a frequency that sort of cuts the energy of the storm. So yeah, it sounds like there's a bit of wild weather happening in Norway for Britt Marie as well. Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're safe, and we're all going to be thinking of you and just visualizing calm, smooth.
That's right.
And we do have that power working with intention too. So I just want to remind you guys, please hit the notification bell to check out telepathy and telethought. This is going to be such a fun episode. I was already diving into the research, and I've got sticky notes everywhere throughout one of my favorite books that will be teaching all about telethought and telepathy. Also, if you want to familiarize yourself with energy a little bit more and get a little bit more tuned into seeing into other realms, I do have the Learn How to See Auras course that is up on masonjupiter.com. So you will find that there. But thank you for being with us tonight, guys. Such a fun show as always. And thank you to our gorgeous Soul Tribe for all of the beautiful communications, and happy birthday to the birthday boys in the group too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. It's always a pleasure. I'm so grateful.